All right, thank you everybody for joining me. I'm going to be talking about GitOps promotions. My name is Dan Garfield. I am the VP of Open Source and GitOps at Octopus Deploy. I'm an Argo maintainer. I am a co-founder of Codefresh. If any of you are familiar with, how many people know GitOps, Open GitOps principles? Most of the people. So that's a project that I helped start and wrote a lot of those principles with 80 other people, but yeah, that's a project that I worked on, and so I hope that you're getting value out of those, and that's something that we're going to continue to do. So today we're going to talk about a guide to GitOps promotions with Argo CD and Codefresh, and let me first start off with Argo CD. How many people are using Argo CD? And keep your hand up if you like it. Keep your hand up if you hate it. Okay, that was kind of a listening comprehension test. Because nobody hates it, so I'm glad to see everybody still likes it. Argo CD, really, at the very core of what it does, it has one job. It looks at some YAML. That's it, right? Just looks at some YAML. It could be in Git, could be in an OCI image, but it could be in a Helm chart, whatever it is. It looks at some YAML, and it makes sure that that's what's deployed on the cluster. That's really its whole job. And everything else that we do is an extension of that. So there's all these other things like, how do I manage multiple environments? Well, you can you can definitely have YAML that is for different environments. You can point at different Kubernetes clusters that are part of different environments, so you can get there with some of that. Promoting changes from one to another, that's another thing a lot of people script around. How do you do the config management itself? How do you do multiple tenants? How do you handle security? How do you do disaster recovery? So there's all these things that end up around Argo that you need to be successful. So this is something, today's talk, we're going to talk about promotion. And I did a talk at KubeCon, at ArgoCon with Victor Farsick, who's here, about 1 million ways to promote changes between environments, where we really cover this landscape. So I'm not going to go into all of those tools today. Today, we get to talk about my favorite tool, which is Codefresh GitOps. And we're going to talk about some of these principles that, it's not just a sales pitch, where we're just talking about our tools, but it is a number of principles that are going to be useful whether or not you decide to use this tool as well. So let me introduce a couple of concepts here. First up, what do developers want? At the end of the day, breakfast. What was it? A raise, yes. They want a raise, right? Developers do want a raise, and in order to get there, they're going to have to do one thing, and that's going to be their core loop, and that is get a change into production with as little nonsense as possible, right? That's all they're trying to do. They want to write their code, get it to production, and so they can earn that raise. So that's what developers want. Everything else is kind of in the way. So Argo CD is really great because you can see what's going on, and you can see the source of truth, so it gives you a lot of visibility. But we're going to talk about that promotion. So that core loop of how we get things into production, right? We build our changes, right? We got to write the code, we got to build the container, we got to do some tests and whatever. Then we need to promote it. So we put it into staging, or we put it into a test environment of some kind, or we put it into production. We test those changes, and then we debug or roll back. And that's the whole loop, okay? You just do that over and over again as a developer. And with GitOps, one of the things that we really recommend people do is that they separate their application code from their Kubernetes configuration, from their infrastructure code. Those become two separate repositories usually. They don't have to be, but we recommend that. And so when we promote changes, really the whole flow is we've got an application change, right? We want to run some actions before and after each step. Before we go to dev, we want to maybe let people know what's going on. We want to go to staging, we want to go to production. And this is a sequential, typically is sequentially going between environments with different steps in between. So this looks kind of workflow-esque. And I think most people end up using their CI tool to orchestrate this. They write a lot of scripts. And we find that that's fairly problematic with GitOps, because GitOps, remember GitOps, it is declarative, it's not imperative. Workflows are imperative, right? So already we have a separation in philosophy, but GitOps is also about eventual consistency, right? Whereas workflows are like, hey, it's got to do it right now. So You may be trying to push a change to an application automatically with sequential imperative operations, but the application is down. So what's the CI pipeline going to do? It's going to update configuration, take a swing and just throw it, and then it'll not know what's going on, right? Whereas in a GitOps world, applications can go down, they can come back. It's okay. We expect that they're gonna come back and they'll get updated as soon as they're available again. So if you, with a CI pipeline that you've abused to do environment promotion, you're gonna find these situations where it doesn't work properly. And even just working with Argo CD, there are issues with that too, because Argo CD has status flapping. Anybody ever had flapping happening? I see a few people nodding their heads, right? Where it will switch to healthy to unhealthy to progressing, synced, unsynced. And this kind of flapping operation causes havoc in a CI pipeline that's trying to orchestrate against it, because it's just saying, oh, I'm just looking to see that it's synced. Oh, it's synced, move on. And then it switches to unsynced and unhealthy, and the workflow can't do anything about it. So you're like, oh, hey, I know some people are listening like, I can script around that. I'll build in wait steps. I'll build in polling. I'll build in checks. And boy, you build a lot of stuff, and suddenly you got a Homer Simpson car on your hands where it's trying to do a lot of things. So we definitely recommend that people don't abuse that. But let me introduce some concepts that you can use when you're building environment promotion flow, regardless of what tools you use, that are going to make your life easier and your developer's life. So the first thing that we want to look at is this concept of applications. So we've got, let's say, a dev environment, a staging, a production environment, and we've got one application, two applications, three applications. Because in Argo CD, it's going to be pointing at different Kubernetes configuration, right? Now, there are some setups where you could share configuration. We actually don't recommend that because you want to be in a situation where you can deploy something different in production as what's deployed in staging, as what's deployed in dev. You don't want to be in a situation where Git does not reconcile to what's actually deployed, right? You want it to be a separate source of truth. So this is three applications. So when we talk about, and boy, the application word is so overloaded in our world, right? You're like, oh, I manage an application. You're like, oh, like an iOS app? And you're like, no. I manage an application. Oh, a Kubernetes app? Well, there's not a primitive of Kubernetes for application, right? Argo CD has applications. But when you're talking about your app that you're managing, you're probably thinking the thing that you deploy to development, then to staging, and then to production, and you're responsible for getting that thing to production. So these three apps, we link together, and we call this a product. So what are you shipping? I ship a product. That product has a life cycle that exists in multiple environments, in dev, and staging, and production. Okay, so that's terminology. Point number one is a product. A product is the linkage between multiple applications that exist across the life cycle. Okay. This is really great because this is actually the thing that you ship. It comprises multiple Argo CD applications, and it contains comparable manifests. And this is going to be key later because that's going to be what allows us to check what's different between dev and staging. We'll talk about that in a second. And here you can see, for example, when I'm promoting a change, I might be promoting an image tag or an app version. I might be promoting different things. So this is going to give us our diffing capability because we link these applications together with a product. Okay, the second thing that I want to introduce is versions and versioning. So inside of the GitOps world, we are always looking at Git hashes. Oh, is it this Git hash? Is it that Git hash? What's that Git hash? And so you're looking at what's deployed, what was deployed, and you see a list of Git hashes. And who memorizes Git hashes? Does anybody have a favorite one? Anybody's reminiscing about, oh, 7AB E14F. Oh boy, that was a good Git hash, right? Yeah, nobody does that. Why is that? So developers don't care about Git hashes. GitOps, it matters because we want to be synced to a Git hash, but it could contain anything. There could be anything in that Git hash. Okay, so we don't know what's in that Git hash or what, and we could click on it and go and dig into it in the references, but developers don't really care about that. What they really care about are versions, right? And so it's version 1.4, 1.41, whatever. And that tells me, oh, I can ship a change, and I know what version my change is in, and so if I know that the version is higher than that, my change is in that version. So already, let's think about versions instead of Git hashes. This is going to be a lot more useful to us. And so I think some people, I added this little helper image here. So Docker images, I should just be thinking about Docker images because maybe you're using an image tag that has versions on it. Let's talk about that. Well, Well, images aren't enough, right? So the first problem is that Docker images are actually, their tags are mutable. So it's kind of a problem to rely on mutable versioning. That's a little bit of a challenge. And then the other thing is that containers, the image versions, they only contain about 80% of our changes. 80% of the time, I make a change to my application code, it builds my image, I tag it with a new version, I deploy it, great. But 20% of the time, I need to update credentials, I need to update configuration, I have other things in my manifest that I need to be able to take care of. So this isn't going to be enough just to use Docker images. And the other thing that is connected with this is when it comes to promotion, versioning isn't enough either, right? Because I can look at, for example, I've got these different environments here. I want to go to production, and now I need to remember which version is the one that I just deployed. Wouldn't it be better if I thought of where it was coming from, right? If instead of saying, oh, for production, I need 1.4.5, if I just said, whatever I put in staging, that's what I need to push to production. And behind the scenes, the versioning, I can at least recognize what the version is when I'm looking at it, but really when I'm thinking about a promotion, I'm thinking about taking something from one environment to another. So that's what I really want to be thinking about. That's going to make me as a developer happier. And this brings us to, I think, our last concept, which is going to be environments. Now, there's kind of been this lurking thing in the background of this talk where I keep on talking about environments, production, environments, staging. How many people manage environments? You manage clusters, right? Or environments. Wait, are they the same thing? What's the difference? So let's look, for example, at this diagram here. We've got dev, staging, and production. Is production one cluster? How many people have one cluster for production? A couple people. How many people have one namespace for production? Not too many, none today. But that's pretty common in a large organization. You might have just a namespace. That's production. And some people are saying, oh, production's 10 regions, right? With cluster 1, 2, 3, A, B, AC, whatever it is. So production might actually represent multiple clusters. Now, I, as a developer, if I have to care about, if we go back to our promotion flow, I'm pushing from staging to production, right? Do I care how many clusters are in production? I super don't. That's operations job. They're adding clusters, they're removing clusters, they're deploying new regions, boom, boom, they're doing magic. That's their business. It's not really, I don't really care. I want my change in production. That's my one job. I want that raise, I want that promotion, I want to get my change into production, right? So it might be 3 clusters or 10 clusters or 100 clusters. I don't really want to care what's going on there. I just want to think I'm pushing to production. That means something to me. And the clusters underneath the scenes, they can be changing or whatever. And of course, that also means that I could be dealing with namespaces, right? I could be pushing to production namespace and then a staging namespace. But now you're getting in these operation concerns, and wouldn't it be nice if we separate that? Okay. So we're going to separate those. Remember, developers don't care about clusters. They care a lot about environments. What did we all learn about Kubernetes 5 years ago? When Kelsey Hightower got up and he gave that demo, everybody was, wow, clusters are super cool. And then what did they say? They said, I don't know if the Kubernetes, is going to be the thing, but the API is going to stick around for a long, long time, right? And I don't know if I want to have developers caring about clusters. And, well, flash forward, developers don't really care about clusters. They just want to make sure their thing makes it into production. So these are the critical concepts, right? Application promotion, apps versus products. Okay, products gives you a way to group and think about these things. I'm shipping a product to production. Git hashes versus versioning, right? So I'd rather push 1.4, and I might even rather push from staging. And clusters versus environments. So these are the critical concepts that are going to enable you to take a GitOps mindset, a GitOps mindset when you're pushing your promotions. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into Codefresh GitOps a little bit and talk about how we do this. So the first thing that we do is we have products. And a product are apps that are annotated to be promotable to each other. So the way that we do this is we just put an annotation on an application, Argo CD application, and anything that has that Argo CD application annotated, if they share that annotation, they are part of the same product. So you could call that shopping cart or backend or whatever it is for your application. And when I go between environments, it's any clusters or namespaces. So I can define those however I want. And in the background, the ops can be adding, removing, doing whatever. And I, as a developer, know that it's pushing to production. And this is a big thing with Argo CD because when you're looking at Argo CD, of course, it's showing you clusters, right? It's not showing you environments. And so you might be like, oh, I'm pushing to production. That means I need to go and check these 4 different applications for these different clusters. What if I just thought, is my product deployed, right? So my life is already getting simplified. And then a promotion, we have a simple single CRD that creates a policy for how these promotions work. And we can do manual or automated promotions via either commit or pull request. So we're going to do GitOps along the whole way. Everything we're talking about is GitOps first. So we're making a git commit for each change that we're going to make to production or any other environment. So we always know it's deployed. And this is what that product CRD looks like, and it shows us a promotion template. And I'll explain that maybe in just a second. And then let's talk about promotion flows, and I'm going to show you all how this works. But this is a single CRD for promotion flows that we have. And this CRD allows me to set the steps of here's how I move between environments. And so I can just say, for example, you can see I've got environment QA, and it depends on environment dev. So once dev is successfully deployed, we can then go to QA. And it has policies set where it's going to make a commit instead of a pull request when it does that promotion. And before it does that, it's going to run smoke tests. And when it's done, it's going to send a Slack notification. And I can have hooks that run on start, on success, on failure. So this is a declarative format that replaces that imperative workflow approach. And this is going to be much more reliable because it's done in a GitOps fashion. And it's designed for working with Argo CD. It's designed for working with Kubernetes. And there's another component here, which is the diffing aspect. So let me show you what that looks like. And we're going to jump into the real world. And feel free, just to check in really quick, before we jump in, any questions that we should address? You can shout them out, and I'll repeat them for the camera. Let me close these open random invoices I have here. All right, so I'm going to jump into Codefresh GitOps platform. And I'm going to show you how we do diffing and everything, but let me just introduce you to the platform here first. So I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Hopefully y'all can see that pretty well. So the first thing you'll probably notice is, hey, that kind of looks like Argo CD, except it's blue and fancy. Well, that's true. It is blue and fancy, and it does look a lot like Argo CD. So this is actually a control plane for Argo CD. So one of the problems we didn't talk about when we were talking about all those different environments and those different clusters, we really recommend that you don't use the same Argo CD for production as you use for staging and development, right? Because I want to push a change. I want to upgrade a new version of Argo CD. Oh, there's a regression in it. I'm sorry, I'm an Argo maintainer. Every once in a while we ship some regressions. I apologize. If you want to yell at me afterwards, I'll be available. All yelling hours will be taking place between 4 and 5. But you want to be able to push that change into a staging instance before you push it into a production instance. That's very basic, and it's a separation of concerns, and it's going to lower your blast radius of potential issues. So that's going to be helpful. So this control plane allows me to see all my applications regardless of what Argo instance is managing them. Another reason I might have different Argo instances is because some are behind a different firewall. Maybe some are located, I don't know if you all know, but there's Kubernetes within this 2-block radius of where we're at. There are probably several hundred Kubernetes clusters, and I can walk around and I can show you which retailers actually have a Kubernetes cluster in their location. So you're using Kubernetes every day. You said Spotify's over here. Yeah, Spotify's got plenty of them, but it's not just those folks, but retailers too, right? So they're using Argo CD, right? These are folks that are using these tools. So here, no matter where these clusters are, where these runtimes are, I as a developer, again, what do developers do? They don't care about all that stuff, right? They care about shipping their change to production. So I'm looking at these applications, and if I jump into one of these, let's try this one. If I click into it, again, you're going to see an interface that is very similar to Argo CD. I can jump in, I can look at my pods, I can review my logs, all the stuff that you normally do. But we also introduced this concept of a release timeline. So if I go to this timeline here, this is going to show me all the changes that have happened to this application over time. And one of the things that we can do is when I'm looking at these changes, it'll actually show me who's been making those changes. And I mentioned at the very top that we should separate our application code from our Kubernetes configuration, right? Well, in Argo CD, when I click on my Git hash, look at those Git hashes. We love them Git hashes, don't we? What's it going to show me? It's going to show me that an image changed, right? Oh boy, okay, an image changed. 80% of the time, it's just an image was changed. Okay, that doesn't tell me anything about what code was changed. And so what I have here on this release timeline is we actually extract from that image, oh, here's the pull request that was being worked on the application repo. So I can actually go and look at the code and see what code changed inside that image. So suddenly, I have all that context. And it's also going to show me my Jira ticket that was being worked on, shows me the CI build, the CI pipeline that built this thing, and this is going to work if you're using Codefresh, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, whatever CI pipeline you're using. It's going to have all that available, so I can go and see where this thing came from. So now I have full provenance. I know exactly where this change came from, who worked on it, what was in it. I'm no longer staring at an image tag with a Git hash and wondering. Now, so I have all that context. Well, what does this have to do with promotions? Not really a whole lot, but that visibility is really useful for the promotion stuff. We'll come back to it. But I just wanted to give you this quick introduction to Codefresh as a control plane. Let's jump into the promotions, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to my environments view. And remember, what's an environment? An environment is any number of clusters, namespaces. It could even be application labels. Can you see this okay? Is this big enough? Do I need to zoom more? People thumbs up? Okay. So this is going to give you that view of exactly what's going on. And if I want to promote a change from QA to staging, I'm going to grab this one, and we'll kick off this promotion. I'm going to drag and drop this. Now, I can do this, of course, declaratively. I can do an operation to do this. We'll see if this one loads okay. It's been running a little slow today. But here it's popped up. It's showing me my image. It's going to be updated. And I can make a commit or a pull request. And that's another cool thing about Codefresh is everything you see is actually a thin client for Git. So any change I make, that's going to be a commit. If I'm going to promote it, I'm making a commit, and I'm going to do that as my Git user, right? This isn't some proxy, bot that's going to do it. It's going to be me with my Git permissions that do it. So this is really powerful, and I could also do it as a pull request. I could set, a Slack notification and smoke tests to run, so I can do this whole promotion flow. But again, I'm just thinking about dev versus staging. Now, what about in these environments? Let's go over to a production one. So you see prod US, if I look at the product that's here, the product is accounts that I'm looking at here, and it actually has multiple in production. Why is this? And we can see if we look, it's going to show me the application here, accounts east versus accounts west. Well, that's because production is multiple Kubernetes clusters. I'm pushing to production, and you can wildcard this. You can define this. This is saved in Git. And you can set up a wildcard and say it's any of these clusters, under this name, can be part of that. And so when I do a promotion, it's going to compare against all of those. Now, a key component that we've been kind of mentioning when we do that diff of what's going to change is actually we're going to go to the product. It's going to be managing the differences between applications. So if I go to promotion settings here, here you can see I have these promotable properties. So let's say that I wanted to grab from my values.yaml, and I only wanted to promote the resource information that's under there. So I'm going to add this, and so this is just a JSON, path that I've added. So I can just add any glob that I want from any of my files, and I can define what's going to change and what's not going to change. And when I do my diff, when I do that promotion, that's going to have that real-time information where it's only going to show me what should be changed based on what's configured here. And again, this is just a Kubernetes CRD. So I can manage this all. Declaratively again. Now we're pretty short on time, but I'll just show you that on releases here you can see that I recently had a change that went from dev to QA installed. Let's look at a broken one, right? And I can actually go in here and I can see the status of all of the applications that went up, and I could dig into this one. Now this one says terminated, which means somebody manually hit stop. Perfect for a demo. But I can get all that information, all that context as part of my promotion flow. So all that's available and made very clear, which is nice. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to see more, I hope I gave you some concepts that you can use no matter what GitOps tooling you end up using, no matter what promotion tooling you're using. But this is the kind of stuff where if you can do this, it's going to make people's lives a lot better. Now, we do have this GitOps delivery platform, software delivery platform for Kubernetes that is the Codefresh platform. We're a leading Argo maintainer. Last year, I was the 3rd highest committer on Argo CD. My coworker colleague, Pasha, was number 2. So we're some of the most active Argo CD maintainers. We're the number 1 security maintainer. We do more security patches than anybody else combined. We also offer Argo support and Argo training. So if you need enterprise support for Argo, hit us up. We help out with that. We also do the training. So there's a GitOps certification training that we offer. And this session was originally supposed to be longer, and we were going to do a whole GitOps training, but we ran out of time. But we still printed 100% off codes for that certification. So go by the booth and ask for one, and they'll get you hooked up, and so you can have that. And lastly, more on this environments versus dev experience. There's a blog post I recommend that you read that Kos has put together that goes through some of the stuff that we covered in this talk. So again, thank you so much, and I'll be around to answer questions afterwards. Thank you.